Yeah, one of the best examples, we're doing all this for wildfire, but one of the best examples that we had in West Kelowna is when we had our flooding deployment, and we were using wildfire 20 packs like crazy, and they were coming in with these predetermined 5 packs that were ops planning logistics, and we took that and we're watching how efficient they were and how well they were functioning, and have since that stolen that for our own. When we deploy as a strike team task force leader, you lay that out, everyone knows the expectations, you know that paperwork's going to get done, you know that pre-checks are going to get done, you know that fueling's being done, and you only have to ask for it once. It's not something that you got to ask every day for 14 days because you've assigned that responsibility, and it's great, gives crews stuff to do, which is important.
Yeah. So as you come into the incident, you're going to be going to a structure base staging location, hopefully, if it's established. The challenge with that is that deploying these particular single resources can take time, and you're typically after the first operational period. We are getting better at pre-planning or planning ahead of the event. It's those, in the community interface fires that are just not practical to be able to staff those up. Joel, you can attest to that. But as day 2 shows up and day 3 shows up, you're going to start getting a lot of iron on the ground, and you're going to have like staging managers with big trailers showing up, and communication systems and professionals that can help you with accountability, because you start showing up with basically the size of the city of Vancouver fleet, 60 fire apparatus in a field somewhere. You better be accountable for that, because the expectation is that's in place. So you as an engine boss need to know your responsibilities. Have your drawdown. Make sure that you're signing and checking in with the individuals that's on your drawdown. And now you may be asked to go to a different location to check in with a plan section chief with the incident management team, or you may be asked to maintain the integrity of the structure branch from a staging base manager that reports up to the plan section chief of the incident management team. That now sounds a little bit complex, and it is complex, no joke, but it is a system that we use and we're very familiar with it. But you need to know who you report to in the incident command system. You will be given a T-card to fill out. It's a sample in your manuals. We're actually making personalized T-cards for these deployments. That makes sense not through the national FEMA model, but it makes sense through the provincial BC model that identifies exactly what we want to know on a deployment. So there's samples in your book, you can have a look at those. You're going to be assigned a unit number. It may not be the unit number on your piece of apparatus. It really applies to what type of rig you're bringing to the event. So for this example, Penticton brings an engine to a Type 1 engine to an event. It's going to be engine 1. A Type 1 engine starts with 100 series, Type 2 engine, 200 series, 300 series, and so on. That incident will give you a specific call sign and unit number for your apparatus. If that apparatus leaves the event, it's gone for good. It can't be renumbered, that number, for that particular event. So if you come back, don't expect that you're going to be able to just write the number on your apparatus again, the same as it was when you left. You need to have a contact number for you, the engine boss, preferably phone cell number, and a secondary number on your crew if you have that. We write things down in pencil a lot of times because things change throughout the incident. As things change and as crews move in and out of that particular apparatus, we have to change them as accountability officers for that incident. You will go through a demobilization process too. The Incident Command System Form ICS 221 in your manuals. We follow that process. It has to be signed off by the task force leader that you report to and the branch, so that when you get home and you've done damage to your apparatus, it's not the fault of the incident, and we're not going to be recovering those costs. Our friends in the back, the OFC, will respect that, I'm sure. Yeah, I think I've covered that off there. So there's the T-card samples there. It really identifies more specifically what we want to know, like call sign, what your agency is, what your departure date was, apparatus category, apparatus type, numbers of persons, your resource number itself, check-in dates, demob date, check-in time, demob time, who your engine boss is, contact information, crew names, who your task force leader is on the back, departure point, where you're staying, what base you're at. What does that say? Oh, where your fire department is and your contact information, where your final destination is. Because if you're being demobbed out of an event and you're going to another event, we want to know that you're going to get there, who you're going to check in with, and how we're going to make sure that you're there safely, right? I apologize for the screen, guys. I know it's difficult. Those in the back are probably going to be able to view it a little easier. But camp life, yeah, this is it, basically. So we have Burns Lake on the bottom right, Oliver on the top, Williams Lake on the far left, and Fraser Lake on the bottom left. This is what you can expect, a whole bunch of crowded mess of a whole bunch of temps, typically well organized. As a structure base, we try to make sure that we pod up our camps into engines and task forces, because there's going to be different start times and end times. We're going to have a morning shift, a swing shift, and a late evening shift, and probably a night shift. So we don't want to interrupt a whole bunch of trucks coming in and out of camp for those purposes. And if you're on the night shift, you may even be put into a motel because you're just not going to get any rack time in the camp if you have engines coming and going all day long. It's just not practical. So night shifts can sometimes be not such a bad thing. But yeah, we're checking in with planning. You are certainly expected to stay in the camp. And I can tell you through experience, don't bring an RV. You'll be turned around. I'm telling you that through experience. Tents only. There are zero tolerances for drugs and alcohol. This is all very clearly outlined in the Code of Conduct and the Interagency Agreement. I'm sure Kim, our IC, will talk more on that. There's very limited power. You'll find that there'll be like one socket in the whole camp and everybody in their phone chargers is trying to get into it. It's a total fire hazard. And so bring your own systems if you can. The cool thing about it, we have big fire trucks with usually we have generation systems on it or inverters, etc. on our apparatus, which helps a lot. So find your own way to charge it. You can get those little battery packs that you can take with you on deployment that you can recharge throughout the day in your apparatus. Very handy little doohickeys. Laundry sometimes, but expect to be dirty and stinky for the 14 days you're out there. Nobody will take offense to it because we all smell that way. But yeah, in some cases, laundry services are available and it works very well. Talk to your task force leader, probably more experience on how camp life works. And basically it's a black bag, you put your name on it and it'll end up on the clean shelf eventually sometime thereafter. Fueling up, making sure that you come back to the camp operationally ready. When you're done your day's operational period, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get redeployed for that day, hence the no drugs and alcohol policy. You cannot be, you have to remain operationally ready to deploy for that event. Just because you're in the camp, in staging, or in the rack, I mean in your tent sleeping, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get a, hey, let's go, we got a breakout into a community at night, and that happens. So be prepared for that.
Just further to that, Chief, make sure this really helps in terms of organization, in terms of like deploying out at night, like with very little notice, is pitch your tents in close proximity to your task force leader and other engine companies. Yeah. I mean, like literally like next to each other, and put some sort of indicator out front, like Task Force 5. That way, like if something blows up at like 0300, and they're going around looking for a task force, it's real easy to find that one group. They're all there together. They're all kind of on the ready to roll and not waking up the whole camp.
We typically have a night shift on, and the staging base, like the structure base, has comms for those that are checking in, and that will be the person that wakes you up. And I'll share a little story with you too, like talk about marking your tent. When you come in late and it's dark, and you've marked your tent with a flat, like one of those solar lights, and somebody moves it to another green tent that looks identical to you, and you crawl into bed with one of your partners. It's awkward, but it happens. So just, I understand where you are and how you can be located at that. Not saying that happened to me. Oh, another Lou Wild story. Kitchen is not open all night long. As an engine boss or a task force leader, be aware of that. You may be held out on the fire line longer than you anticipate. 12-hour shift doesn't mean just like 12-hour comes up and you high-five the guys coming in and you're on your way out. If the incident demands that you require to stay on that for structural protection, you stay on that fire. And you may be coming back after that day, after 16 hours, and it's now 12 o'clock at night, and the kitchen is literally sanitizing the tabletops, and you're like, oh, my whole engine company hasn't got any food and we need to eat. I'm sure Lou, I can share this story with Lou, but I know that the chef of that particular camp kitchen recognizes Lou every time he comes up to the counter to get food. She seems to go into the back and then come back with a new plate of food specifically for Lou. I don't know what's in it, but I know what happens. So yeah, make sure you inform those that are, if you're staying in the field, update your task force leader. It'll go through the group soup into the branch, and then the branch will make sure the kitchen has got food for you when you return back to the camp. Okay? I talk about the code of conduct. I can't reinforce that enough. Read the code of conduct, know the code of conduct, live the code of conduct, be the code of conduct. Expectations of COVID-19. Yeah, this is a whole nother level of uncertainty. Last year here in Penticton, trying to work around having 60 fire apparatus from all around the province show up in Penticton under strict protocols of COVID-19. Fortunately, we had an EOC activated. We had great minds in that EOC helping manage COVID requirements. That doesn't mean that's going to be the case in everywhere we go. Just be mindful of where you're at with COVID, like where the province is at with COVID, what the incidence requirements are for COVID. Here we are today, practicing safe social distancing, doing all the precautionary measures for COVID responsibilities. I'm sure Kim will add to this a little bit. And it's a complicated nightmare that we're living in with COVID. The incident will bring specialists for that specific reason to make sure that we're compliant, and safety officers that manage COVID. But it's your responsibility also, as you are a leader of your crew, to be COVID compliant in a camp. Be mindful of distancing, be mindful of the facilities that you're going to be in. Washrooms, showers, etc., etc. Okay? We're not sharing water bottles out in the field anymore. Masks in apparatus. Crew orientation and briefing. I'm going to cover this quickly because I know the guys, the Chad and Brent show, will put on a pretty good demonstration there. So I'm probably just going to pass over this. You guys are going to cover this, right? Or mostly. Yeah,
we're going to cover all this stuff in day 2 in the field.
Yeah. So again, in day 2 in the field, you're going to get a lot of briefings. You're going to understand how to deliver a briefing. We follow the incident, the field guide that you have in your booklet there. It's really the incident response pocket guides foundation on how to do that. We're going to talk a lot about weather, fire behavior, logistics, communications, the med plan and the incident action plan and how to refer to that. An incident within an incident, like how to deal with somebody getting hurt on your crew, other tasking, etc. This is a lot of day 2 operations. So back to camp, we talked about refueling, making sure you're coming back operationally ready, understanding what the expectations are from your task force leader and you as an engine boss on how to re-rack your rig. Depending on what type of apparatus it is, will depend on how you actually set up your rig for functional operations in the field. That'll be covered also in day 2 on how to appropriately rack a rig for your particular apparatus and what you're working on. It is also your responsibility to complete the paperwork for the end of that operational period. That is your daily time reports for your entire crew and your ICS 214. We'll get into that here shortly and what that looks like. Again, be operationally ready for the incident. I got to keep pressing through this. At the end of the operational period, here's a sample of a DTR. On the bottom of these sheets, this is in your manual. Please have a look at it, you guys. Tab 3. On the bottom it tells you what copy goes where, but I just added on here. So the fire center, that copy is going to go to them through the plans section chief. The yellow is the incident copy that stays with the plans chief also, but the pink and green are yours to take home. That's for your accountability purposes. But it does need to be clearly outlined, and this is a sample of how we would like you to fill out your daily time reports. You will not get this signed off until it's done completely and accurately. So there's the signing authority on this document has to be done by BC Wildfire Service officer or a structure protection specialist that will be in your branch. So somebody that's wearing a red shirt will likely be able to sign this off in a leadership position within the branch. So that has to be done, and then it will get all submitted into the plan section chief altogether into finance. So that is how that is coordinated. The DTR, the ICS 214 is basically a log of your high-level operations of the day. Who you are, what you are, who you're with, and what your operations were for the day. This will be more specifically explained to you in day 2 in the field, because you'll have to actually submit this documentation to your task force leader in day 2 on what you actually completed in the class in the field. So there'll be more to come on this in day 2.